Human design is a part science, part spiritual system that tells you who you came here to be. You have your own blueprint, your own way of becoming successful, your own way your dreams are going to come true, the way you'll experience the most joy and fulfillment. The instruction manual for how to move through the world is custom to you. When you act according to that manual, when you act as the real you, everything in life comes to you with more ease and less resistance. We all know we're different, yet we're still acting like there's one way to do life. Let's talk about it. To find out your design and the designs of the people in your life, you can visit myhumandesign.com or download the My Human Design app in the App Store and on Google Play.
I've been thinking so much recently about our common human wounds, like abandonment, not feeling seen, not feeling loved. And as much as our minds might convince us that these things are specific to us, and therefore the next thought is that there must have been something wrong with our experience that gave us those issues, even trust issues, I want us to start thinking about these things in a different way now, where we come in as these pure, bright light souls. And then we get plonked onto this weird earth school where we bump up against other people who are also the light, but they have different costumes than us. And their costumes and our costumes kind of make kinks in each other. And therefore, every human who knows that ultimately the truth of things up in the theoretical world is that there is only love and there is only acceptance and there is only like all sharing, all giving, all embracing energy, we come onto this earth school and we kind of have to learn that sometimes situations don't always reflect that. But when we're children, the first situation that doesn't reflect full trust gives us potential to have a trust issue. The first time that our parent is not with us gives us a potential for an abandonment issue. Does it mean we're being abandoned? Or does it mean that we are learning that life is kind of always in a flow, in and out of people being with us, people sometimes being untrustworthy, people sometimes not even being untrustworthy, but saying things they don't necessarily mean or making a mistake with their words. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we as kids are correct to misinterpret that as the abandonment. So I'll give you an example. I know a lot of people who have abandonment issues, and when we talk about them from our adult selves, we're now able to see, oh, it wasn't that my parents abandoned me. It was that my parents also would want to sometimes go out, the two of them, and I would want to do the same. And me in my 5-year-old or 6-year-old child brain, because I didn't know that that meant they were coming back and you have no concept of time, I interpreted that as abandonment and I've internalized that and I've carried that on. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. And that also means that there's nothing wrong with me or the way I've interpreted it. And yes, of course, some more acute, painful situations require healing. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said for the fact that we should now zoom out and say, this kind of pulling in and pulling out and going towards and moving against each other as human beings, this dance we do of love and belonging and togetherness, and also prioritizing what we prioritize, and also not always being able to be together, and also not always being able to make everybody happy, is a part of life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we are not abandoned or that we are not seen. And the reason why I bring this up is because if we hold on to these siloed narratives that I wasn't seen as a kid and therefore I need to be seen, it can actually end up backfiring against us. Because if you end up in any partnership, There will be some percentage of times when that person has had a hard day and they haven't been able to give you all the time they can to make you feel seen, or they haven't taken as seriously something you said mattered to you because to them it didn't matter and they misunderstood. A lot of this stuff is actually down to misunderstanding, and I don't think we are quick enough to put it down to misunderstanding or miscommunication and giving people the benefit of the doubt of what we call, you and I, looking for the innocent intent behind things, right? And I think there is such a blessing upon literally stalking for the innocent intent behind probably 90 to 95% of the stuff that has happened to us, not only because it increases forgiveness and it actually helps you see things from a higher level of consciousness, right? And then it helps you become more loving when you shine a more light loving perspective on something. You not only do that, in which case you become someone with a higher consciousness in that moment, you've awakened more light in yourself, but you also have so much more love for people who maybe have made the mistakes that they did to do those things in the first place, if they did. And it also brings so much levity, where you can then become a person who's like, oh, they're just not getting me right now. Ha ha. I'll try later, rather than go into the stories of, see, I'm not seen. I can't be with this person because they don't see me. Of course, there's validity for sometimes realizing that there are patterns, right? But at the same time, it's always both. And I want us to all be able to do the dance between the two, because it's almost like rites of passage. Even if you have perfect parents who never leave you, who never put a word wrong, the second you get to school, you're going to feel the abandonment wound is going to get triggered. The second you interact with another kid, your trust issue is going to get triggered. And it's almost like life is not going to let us escape the experience of, what if there is true abandonment? What if there is true mistrust? What if there is true not belonging and not being loved? Because we have to contend with those things as possibilities in order to be so bent on creating this life to reflect the exact opposite, which is how life wants us to live life, which is with real love, with real understanding, with real belonging, with real acceptance, right? But if we weren't so pained by the opposite and we were so not aware that the opposite is not something we want to have in our lives, we wouldn't be as motivated to create the truth of the upper world in this life, which is making us be so accepting of others, making us, if we're going to leave, not make other people feel abandoned, see other things through the lens of love that happened to us, right? Be more forgiving to other human beings. So all of that is not specific to us. We all have abandonment wounds. We all have trust issues. We all have times we haven't feel seen. We haven't feel loved. We haven't been accepted for who we are. And it's not because our parents did anything wrong to us, and it's not because we did anything wrong. We just, as kids, didn't know how to see everything through the lens of love because we took things so literally. And as adults now, our work is to see our current, our present, and our past, and hopefully, therefore, through our future, through that lens of love. And this is the opportunity we have to give ourselves and also to give the world now, because the world needs people who have decided, okay, just the fact that I feel abandoned in this moment is not going to be something that my ego uses to reconfirm to me that I have an abandonment issue or an abandonment wound. It's just part and the parcel of being human. And when I rise above the stories that it's so specific to me, I can become a beacon and an ambassador of receiving those things differently in my life, and also giving those energies and interacting with those energies with people differently in my life too. And I think those of us with higher consciousness who realize that there is no shortage of consciousness, love, giving, and forgiving within ourselves, not only is it, something that we can therefore give so freely away, but also that we prefer our lives when we are showing up that way. And ironically, when we show up that way, we are less likely to feel abandonment other people. We are less likely to feel like we don't belong. We are less likely to have all those things come up because we have transformed them in ourselves. And so they no longer need to be part of our movie, prodding us to transform them.
And you've said before, you've shared with us that not only do our parents condition us, but we also condition our parents. And often those pain points that arise, maybe the interpretation you have of maybe your parents are going on a date night and you as a child interpret that as abandonment. Or for me, for example, my dad had a really hard time being able to articulate his perspective on things. He doesn't have, if you want to get advanced human design, his throat center is not connected to his mind. So he really has a hard time articulating his thoughts. I interpreted that as he misunderstands me. No one understands me. So any child, any human in any one of those situations is going to have a completely different interpretation based off of the pain points that, and correct me if I'm saying this right, based on the interpretation or the pain points that their soul needs in order to transform in this life. So I love that you're presenting these pain points not as something wrong with us, but actually a really beautiful tool that we all have in common, that we're all experiencing our own unique flavor of, and that it has such purpose in our ability to connect with other people. Because how beautiful that I get to be in a relationship where I get to learn that I don't necessarily need someone to understand every single thought that I have, because I can't articulate them so clearly. They can still love me and not understand every single thing about me.
Yes. And it doesn't mean that they don't understand you as an essence, or they don't understand you some of the time. And maybe you actually, this is where human design comes in so beautifully. And we talk about this in, our compatibility and new paradigm love and relationship workshops, that when people ask me, who am I compatible with? It really is about learning the other person, because as you're saying that, I know, for example, that because you have your mind connected to your throat, that's something that comes very easily to you. So as a kid, or even before you came across this information, it's natural for us all to assume that other human beings work the same way as us. So for you, watching your dad not be able to do something that you think is like living and breathing to you, and he's not giving it to you, your child brain doesn't go, oh, he just hasn't got it. Your child brain is going, he's not giving that easy thing to me, therefore he must not value me or love me, right? Whereas if someone had a more similar design to him, they wouldn't interpret it in the same way. And so, this is one of our endless kind of shared fascinations, is we all give from the places that are easy to us, and we all cannot be expected to give in areas, and we shouldn't expect other people. We should actually, this is the way that we love them, is we don't put pressure on them to give us things that they simply are unable to do, because in doing so, we're asking them to be different kinds of humans than their authentic self. And so if you really love someone, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friend or anybody, if you look at their chart and you understand the things that you can give to each other, and then really encourage each other to stay in those lanes, there's so much more harmonious flow. And there's none of this like, oh, he can't give me this, or he can't give me that, or she's not doing this and that, and then the stories we create around that. Therefore that means they're stupid, or therefore that means they don't care about spending time with me, stuff like that. It's really frees you of the misassumptions that are not through a lens of love. Because, and this is a really grounded way of explaining why I always say that if you want to love yourself, you have to understand yourself. If you want to love others, you have to understand them. It's like getting very clear on what they are. And every time that you witness them being themselves in a way that is authentic to them, you can allow that to happen without coming up with what that means about you or how they feel about you. You and I talk about this very often with people who have a 5 in their profile versus people who have a 4 in their profile. 4 profiles, we have our people. We want to stay connected to them. We don't spread our seeds far and wide. But, you as a 3-5 and me as a 2-4, my sister's a 3-5 as well. And, everyone is her best friend for a moment, right? And it's very easy for me to feel like, oh, well, does she not want to spend enough time around me then? And when she goes off and says that this person is like so close to her, but I don't even know who they are, does that mean she loves me any less? And understanding these nuances, they get rid of so much of that jump we do so quickly into those thoughts of separation, those thoughts of othering each other that we do. And ironically, when we dissolve the quickness, the speed to which we jump to that separation illusion and lie, we stay in love more often. We stay in love energy. Therefore, we stay in togetherness. Therefore, we don't allow our egos to throw us out of the truth of who we all are as human beings and how we are all one, which we are. We cleave to that truth because we have the mental discipline and the mental remembrance that every time our egos tell us, see, it means you don't belong. See, it means you're not being seen. See, it means that people don't get you. It's in those moments where you don't listen to the separation temptation, and you're the one who wins because you get to stay in love and union so much more. So if you want love and belonging in your life, it's in when you see the stories coming up, it's in those moments that you get to choose to stay in the truth rather than let all the empirical evidence that you see around you that goes, no, 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 but see, this person really isn't seeing you. And you can say, hold on, am I absolutely sure that this is what's actually going on? And of course, sometimes you need some other substantial evidence. You need like a clarifying conversation with the person. Sometimes you need to say, it's been enough times, or I've seen way more negative than I've seen positive. There's other reasons, but in that moment, instead of defaulting to the separation and the judgment, can you take some checks and balances because you want to stay, hopefully, in the love and union? Until maybe if you've really sat with yourself and had a little bit of a review moment in that time, can there be extenuating circumstances? And even then, can you see those judgments through the lens of love of like, I really can't have this person in my life, but that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. They just are dealing with too much, and that's fine too. That is a separation, but also through love. So I guess what the undercurrent message of all of this is, when you see everything through the lens of innocent intent and probably at best just not conscious intent, that's when people say people are doing the best they can with what they know. Whenever you're really struggling with that, try to sit yourself down and have a little bit of a mental exercise where you say to yourself, can I try to see how this situation could be not as horrible as my brain is so quick to jump to the conclusions of? And can I do it even being a bit selfish about it, because I want to feel better about the way I see life and the people in it. And I want to have these loving conversations with people, these loving dynamics with people where I don't create all this space and this separation by literally they're not even aware, but because I've sat here stewing on my judgments of them, I'm already creating separation in my relationships with them. And I just don't want to be that kind of person. And I selfishly want to live in a body that has more capacity to hold the loving perspectives rather than the judgmental ones, because I'm the only one suffering when I'm listening to my mind, who always wants me to jump to that separation and that suffering. And we just simply can't afford for any of us to be feeling that way anymore.
Something that's been helping me is taking a more, I guess, complex approach to my interactions with people and my relationships, where I think sometimes, like, let's take feeling misunderstood as a wound. Sometimes we're like, I'm misunderstood. And then we start to look at how we're misunderstood in every single relationship around us. And we're like, who's going to understand me? Who's going to understand me?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of understanding that we have completely different interactions with every single human that we come across. And just because the majority of things that come out of my mouth you happen to really understand, and there's most other people in my life, I can't say every single thing out loud and know that it's going to be understood, but that doesn't mean that they don't love me and don't understand me. What I've been doing is I've been really just, which this sounds so silly, but I think when I say it, it'll make sense. Having my experience of people with each individual person be different. Like when I'm sitting with my brother, letting myself be experienced in a unique way with him and seeing what he brings to the table for me and what I bring to the table, the way he sees me, the way I see him, and being completely okay with that. And when I go sit 5 minutes later in front of my other brother, letting myself be seen and understood in the way that only he can see and understand me, and not, whatever the wounds are, not feel abandoned by this person. And then the same with my husband, and the same with my dad, and letting each of those worlds kind of have their own moment in me, and letting myself be individually seen and understood in different ways by different people. It's like a more complex way of approaching relationships.
Yeah. And it's also beautiful because you get to witness all the different sides that lay dormant in you come out. And that can only happen when your aura mixes with someone else's aura, that there is a specific type of chemistry and magic that pulls out the things in you and the things in them that are that fit well in the puzzle pieces, or in that you either have in common or that you draw out of each other, that you magnetize out of each other. And what I will magnetize out of you and you will magnetize out of me, our relationship is the only relationship that has this dynamic, this potential, than any other relationship that has ever existed on planet Earth. Tommy Lappy, who's one of our recommended readers, many of you know him already, he's like, it's a world within this world that only two people will ever get to experience. And so why not let that happen? And it really does start with us doing the work to see things through love, so that those worlds that we will only get a whiff of with one other human being on this planet can actually have the best potential that it can have. And the more we do that with more people in our lives, whether we know them for 2 seconds or 2 decades or 2 lifetimes, we're the ones that get to swim in the energy of feeling like a loving human being. And that's when you know that the light is within you. And that's when you do become the divine and you become the person you were meant to become. And you also have more of an ability to be a force that brings that out of other people. And that is the best feeling in the entire world. And that's what we are all wanting right now.